Welcome to Thriving Together, a K-State Research and Extension Douglas County podcast. Each month, we dive into real conversations about what it means to raise healthy kids, build safer neighborhoods, and grow stronger together. From nutrition tips to parenting insights to community wellness and safety strategies, we're here to share stories, resources, and inspiration that help us all to thrive side by side.
Because when families feel supported and communities come together, everyone has a chance to flourish. Get ready to thrive together. Let's get started.
All right, welcome. We're going to dive in today. So I am Kaitlyn Peine, the Community Health and Wellness Agent for our team here at K-State Research and Extension.
And I'm Ginny Barnard, Executive Director for Livewell Douglas County, and I also coordinate Safe Kids Douglas County.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about summer. It's definitely warming up outside and summer is sneaking up on us officially.
Yeah, I realized that this was the end of school, which in my brain triggers the beginning of summer, even though I know the calendar says it's not summer. It feels like summer with warm weather and kids sort of transitioning to summer activities.
For sure. And we know as caregivers, planning for summer actually happens, I feel like, starting after the first of the year. You start thinking about, like, what am I going to do for childcare if your kids still need childcare during the workday, for instance. Day camp registrations open up, sports registrations open up. All the things really happen before the end of school, and it takes a lot of planning and coordinating to make all of that happen.
Yeah, no, this morning I was going over with my husband. I was like, okay, did we turn in the registration for this? Have we paid for that? So that way we have everything signed up, ready to go, and we didn't miss something.
Yes, you almost need an event planner or a personal assistant to make all of this happen. But we definitely recognize there's lots that goes into creating a safe summer for youth specifically. Between Ginny and I, we kind of have kids of all age spans. So my youngest is 7, and then I have a 9-year-old. And what about you, Ginny?
Yeah, so my youngest is finishing up middle school. I have a high schooler and a college age kiddo. So really that older age span where you would think that they're definitely more independent, but we're still just as busy doing all the things.
Yep, somebody still has to shuttle them around, but you probably don't need a babysitter anymore.
No more babysitting.
Which is a good thing. Well, we're going to dive into our topics for today. We have 3 themes that we're going to talk about. The first is sports safety. Then we're going to talk about traveling and car seat safety specifically. This is a time of year where lots of families take the opportunity to get away and spend time together, so making sure we're safe in the car. And then lastly, we're going to talk about scheduling. So first up, we're going to talk about sports safety.
Yeah, so it's really common now that parents, caregivers want to have their kids being active and outside, which is 100% important. But with that comes some safety considerations, specifically if you're doing one sport only, or if you are, intensively having your child participate in lots of different activities that are physically active. There might be some things that you want to consider as we move into summer.
Definitely. I know one big thing that I try to focus on is hydration. So it's warming up. And to be honest, our kids spend a lot of time indoors, especially as we're closing out the school year. And acclimating to the heat can be a little tricky.
Yeah, this one is really important. And a lot of parents don't realize that, especially the younger age kiddos, are not very good at recognizing signs of dehydration. So noticing when they're starting to feel thirsty, they're so focused on playing and having fun, or they don't want to let down their coach or their teammates, that they'll just continue to push past the point of where it's safe, right? And they might start to experience some signs of heat stress, and it could become more serious very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ginny, if I were at a sports practice or a ball game and I notice my kid is kind of falling apart, what are some signs that I should be looking for if I'm worried about dehydration?
So I encourage families to ask specific questions, and it's good to have this conversation, obviously, before you get to the actual game or the practice, so that your kid starts to become aware and can pay better attention. But ask them specific questions instead of just general, how are you feeling? Or are you feeling okay? Ask, Are you thirsty? Do you have a headache? It looks like you might have a headache. And those will give you better answers and guidance on how your kiddo's feeling than if you just ask, how are you feeling? And they're like, I'm fine, Mom, leave me alone, right? And they just want to get back to playing. So be specific about those symptoms that you are more familiar with your kiddo and what they might experience. So every kid's going to be a little bit different. But if they're excessively thirsty, they're starting to experience a headache, maybe they're excessively sweating, maybe things are starting to cramp a little bit, their muscles might be cramping, like my leg really hurts, then those are all signs that are letting us know that we may have pushed too far and we may need to take a pause, get in the shade, get some water, and just let our bodies reset.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I'm always on my kids to get their water bottles before we get out the door, but a little trick I wanted to share is sometimes you still get to the ball field and you don't have the water bottle. And depending on where you're at, there may or may not be a gas station close by to get some bottled water. So I usually have a case of bottled water in the back of my van. And granted, it's probably not going to be super cold, but it's better than nothing, and it's a backup plan. I'll also tell you that sometimes their friends forget water, and it's a good backup plan for other folks too, just to have some extra water around. And honestly, it saves me a little bit of money too.
Yeah, no, that's such a good tip because I know my kids are older, so hopefully they should be remembering these things now on their own, but many times they've forgotten and we will have reached the destination and they don't have their water bottle. So that's really good to just have that water already in the car as a backup plan.
Yes, for sure. We also wanted to spend a little bit of time when we think about safety during the summer is about helmet usage.
Yeah, so I know in our community, we live in the same community, and kids are out, right? As soon as school gets out, they're out playing on the streets and the sidewalks and the parks. And scooters and bicycles are the main form of transportation for these young folks. And I rarely see a helmet on kids. So I think this is something that people don't really think about, especially if they're not like going on a bike ride. They're just like riding around their street. It may not seem as important, but helmets are probably the number one thing that I would recommend that families sort of put a rule, saying, yes, you have to have this. If you're on your wheels, you need to have a helmet on your head.
Yeah, it's one of those, I have very few rules that are non-negotiable, but that's a non-negotiable rule. That and riding in a car seat and being buckled up, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But anytime my kiddos are on anything with wheels, they need a helmet on their head. And it does make me nervous. I see lots of little folks also on motorized scooters or even motorized bikes. We don't do motorized things on wheels in our house, probably because of my job, right? That makes me a little bit more aware of the risk associated with those things. But it really is important to prevent brain injury to have a helmet secured on your kiddo's head. And now is a good time to kind of assess your helmet situation. We were actually just cleaning out our own garage and looking around, realizing that a couple of the helmets were too small. We had a broken buckle on one. Those need to move along, and making sure that your kiddo has at least one well-fitting helmet to use this summer. Now, Ginny, I know through Safe Kids, they have some recommendations about how a helmet should fit and feel on a kid's head. So can you give us some tips to make sure that we all understand what a good fitting helmet looks like?
Yeah, so we want to see the helmet sitting horizontally on their head. So it shouldn't be tipped back, which is very popular. Kids sometimes don't want it to be blocking their view, and it also shouldn't be tipped down. So it should fit horizontally on their head, depending on the type of helmet. So there's different types of helmets, whether you have like a skateboarding helmet or a bicycling helmet. But in general, you want to have about 1 to 2 fingers above your eyebrows, and then the helmet should hit right there near your forehead. And then the other thing to look for is the strap. So the strap should make a little V symbol around your ear, and then the buckle should be buckled. So it doesn't do us any good to have the helmet on and then it not buckled. It will just fall right off if you land on your head. And if you open your mouth, then the helmet should be pulled tight, right? So there should be a little bit of a gap so it's comfortable to wear. But once you open your mouth, then you should feel that strap sort of tighten. And if you don't feel those things, then we need to make some adjustments with the strap, or sometimes with the padding inside the helmet. Those things are adjustable as well.
For sure. And be on the lookout at different community events. I feel like there are frequently helmets. I know both of my girls have really nice helmets right now because of an event we had out in Eudora a year or so ago. And yeah, they walked away with really nice helmets. There's lots of helmet giveaways if you're out and about in the community.
So Safe Kids does some helmets as well. So if you need a helmet, you can definitely contact Safe Kids Douglas County. But we have lots of community partners that also do helmet giveaways. So if that's something that your family is in need of and budgets are tight, definitely don't stress about that. Just reach out, and there's resources available in our community to help you get a helmet.
Yeah, for sure. Have a plan. Decide, what's working, what's not working in your garage or wherever you keep your helmets. And there are definitely resources in the community that you can get a helmet for your kiddo.
So in addition to helmet safety is sort of the next topic, which is traveling and car seat safety. So I know we've been talking about what trips our families are going to be taking over the summer. And you've been brought up a great question about one of your older kiddos of like transitioning from a booster seat. Is it okay for them just to use the regular seat belt? And these are all questions that families have on a regular basis because car seats are sort of complicated. There's a lot of information, a lot of different types of cars and vehicles out there that people travel in.
Yes, for sure. I will tell you, even in the line of work I'm in, I still find myself as a parent and a caregiver questioning what is right. And I still have my 9-year-old that is pretty tall for her age in a booster seat. So I was just asking Ginny, what are the points that I should be looking for to decide if she can be transitioned into a seat without a booster? Even my 7-year-old, actually this weekend, I finally took out her 5-point harness car seat, which she's probably one of the only one of her peers still sitting in a 5-point harness, but she's pretty small and weight-wise also on the lower end. So asking lots of questions. And here in Douglas County, we have Safe Kids as a resource. So when you're in doubt, I know, especially as a new parent, I remember packing up the infant carrier and the base. And at that point, we were going to LMH. Now that's here with Livewell Douglas County on the fairgrounds. But going to LMH to have somebody help me get it installed super well initially, just because I felt so unsure. And it's stressful as a new parent. There are lots of moving pieces. But wanting somebody who knew a lot more about car seat safety than I did to really get that initially buckled really good into the car.
Yeah, so I help coordinate the Safe Kid car seat check lanes that we offer, and those are free. We offer them approximately about once a month during the year, and you can make an appointment or you can also just show up. So you can find that schedule on our website at livewelldgks.org. Or you can definitely call the extension office and we'll help you out with finding when the next car seat check lane is. If those dates don't work for you, I can also help connect you with a child passenger safety technician, which I am one. These are folks that have gone through a training and have been certified to help families check their car seats and also educate them on what's appropriate or what's best for their family. And that's the ultimate goal, is to find what's the best for the family, the car that they have, and the kiddo that they have. So I always like to say we want to keep kids in restraint systems for the maximum height and weight that is allowed before you transition up. Every time we make a move up and reduce, moving from a 5-point harness to a booster seat, right, which is going to happen as kiddos age, but we reduce the safety that is available to them. So I always laugh that if we could all ride in a rear-facing car seat, that would be the safest for all of us. Unfortunately, that's not how vehicles work, right? But making sure that those car seats are properly installed is really important. And just to give you an idea, in Douglas County, the last year in 2024, all the car seats we checked, about 70% were improperly installed or unsafely installed. So it is a high percentage, and it's not the parent's fault or the caregiver's fault. It's just complicated, and every car is a little bit different.
It is, and the owner manuals are really long.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lot to get through. I think one thing that I learned early on is not adding accessories. So when you go to the store and you go down that baby aisle, there are a ton of accessories and little gadgets that you can add to an infant car seat, for instance, that the reality is those are not a good idea and we don't recommend using them.
Yeah, a lot of people have the impression that because something's sold in the store that it's safe to use. But especially for car seats, if it was not tested by the car seat manufacturer, which means typically if it wasn't made by that car seat manufacturer and sold with that car seat, they do not recommend using it. And it's just because it wasn't crash tested, and so we definitely don't know that it's safe. And any of those extra things can act as a projectile. So if you accidentally get into a front end car accident and you have to slam on the brakes, those loose objects can come free and hit people, especially your kiddos, in the face and cause some harm. So just really think about the objects that you have in your car seat, especially since we just talked about water bottles. Those large Stanley water bottles are the really heavy metal ones. If they're not like in a cup holder and safely secured, then those things can go flying and they're very heavy. So I can't imagine having something like that hit me in the face.
That's a really good point, and those are super heavy for sure. So definitely we will, Alicia just gave us a reminder. Got it. Okay. There are definitely different things to keep in mind for car seat safety. This is also another non-negotiable in our household. So we talked about helmets, car seats. As I mentioned, we still have a 7 and a 9-year-old in car seats, and making sure they're buckled up. Really, everybody of all ages needs to be buckled in the car, and that's not negotiable. The car does not move until we're all buckled up.
Yeah, and having that practice early on will benefit you later on down the road. As my kiddos are now old enough to start driving on their own, we've never really had to have this conversation about wearing a car seat or wearing a seatbelt because it's been such a practice and a habit since the time they were very little. And they just know that when they're in the car, when their friends are in the car, everybody's buckled up. And that's the way you want it to be. We don't want to have to think about it or have discussions about it. We just want it to be a habit and that you automatically put that seatbelt on.
For sure. Also, in today's world, we have to rely on other people around us as supports, right, to help transport. And I want to make sure whoever is transporting my child also has that same philosophy. But I also want my kiddo to get into that vehicle and buckle up and not have to be asked to do that. So that practice, that behavior, and reinforcement is really important to establish early on. So it's not an argument. It's not something we debate about when we get in the car. We're buckling up or we're not moving.
Yeah. And I am not, definitely I was a parent when my kids were younger. If I had to use a little incentive of you get your favorite toy as soon as you get in your car seat to hold, or if we get in our car seat, then we can have extra minutes at the park to play. Like whatever those things were, I was happy to use to get us over that hump, right? Because all kids are going to go through that phase where they're like, this is not fun. I do not like riding in this car seat, but we just have to do it.
Yep. For sure. So before we move on to scheduling, let's spend a minute talking about heat stroke and the possibility. So sometimes we see on the media about little ones that maybe can't verbally advocate for themselves being shut in a hot car. So what are some tips that we can think of to make sure that we don't leave an infant in the back of a car?
Yeah, this is something that I'm really passionate about, and I always talk to caregivers. And it, again, is not an intentional behavior. I've never met any parent. Every parent wants the best for their child. And they don't wake up that day with the intention of thinking, oh, I'm going to forget my kid today in the back seat on my way to work. We just live in a very busy society, and our brains are functioning on overdrive, right? We're thinking about a million things. So this is where those habits come back into place. And having a habit of always leaving your most valuable item, which I understand is your child, but typically our phone, our laptop, our purse, work bag, whatever that item is that you would never go anywhere without, leaving that in the back seat is a great reminder to always check. And then the second thing that I would always recommend caregivers to do is if you're using a babysitter or a child care center, have them put in a reminder. If you always drop your child off at 7:30 every morning and it is 7:45 and you're not there yet, they have an automatic reminder to give you a call and say, hey, is something happened? Are you not coming to childcare today? And that will prompt you to be like, oh my gosh, I accidentally drove to work instead of to childcare and dropped my kiddo off. So those two things alone can really save lives. Even this year, we've already had, unfortunately, some deaths due to heat-related incidences where families have left children unintentionally in the back seats of their vehicles. And we want to prevent this as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I've even heard the trick of like leaving a bag or something that you would need to get into your workplace in the back seat. You would, of course, want to make sure it's secured, but definitely having some sort of like, what's going to trigger your brain to look back there? And I get it, especially if you're in that newborn phase or you have a little one and you're not sleeping through the night and we're all going 101 different directions. I've had lots of moments where I've thought, I cannot believe I did X, Y, Z or forgot whatever it was, just because like it's exhausting to take care of an infant. It's hard work.
Yeah, your brain just isn't functioning at 100% with the sleep deprivation and everything else that you're having to deal with. So again, creating that habit or those reminders, putting things in your environment that will trigger you to think about these things can really save lives.
Yeah, for sure. So next up, we're going to talk about scheduling, which we mentioned at the beginning of our segment here today, that scheduling for summer, childcare, day camps, all of those enrichment pieces really happens starting after the first of the year for our household. But we also want to talk about your child's day-to-day schedule and how that might look like in the summer. And it's obviously going to be different. You are probably not going to be having the same routine that your child has experienced for the past several months during the school year.
Yeah, so definitely a shift. And I think this can be a very welcome one. So kids do thrive on having routine, but there is benefits to having a little bit more flexibility, right? Having a little more relaxed schedule, more time, so we're not constantly rush from place to place. This also allows kids to make sure that we're getting adequate sleep. So sometimes I know when we're really busy during the school year, we might be having activities late in the evening, and then we still have to get up for school in the morning, and that sleep can get interrupted. So that's one of the things I love about summer is really like making sure my kids know that sleep is so important, and it's okay to sleep in a little bit. It's okay to go to bed a little bit earlier. Like if your body's feeling tired, we want to make sure we're maximizing sleep.
For sure. I was actually just going over our ball schedule for softball with my dad. And I'll tell you, even my kids being younger, they have some games that don't even start until 8 o'clock, which I'm an old lady. Gosh. That is past my bedtime, right? So I so appreciate the summer, the kids getting to be able to sleep in. And even if they're only sleeping in until 7:30, 8 o'clock, it's not like they're sleeping until noon. We don't recommend that. That's not super productive for our sleep cycle. But getting that extra hour and a half of sleep, especially when they're up so late doing evening activities during the summer, I think is a really big benefit. And I know my girls are definitely feeling the end of the school year and ready to probably benefit from sleeping in a little bit.
Yeah, and it really does help everybody's attitude and your ability to like get along with your friends and family members, right? If you're getting enough sleep, help prevent some of those meltdowns.
And having that downtime in the morning, I think, is really helpful. Now it's like we get up, we rush, get to school, and a lot of times they don't have day camps that start until later in the morning, so they get that downtime to hopefully rest and recharge.
Well, and I have teenagers, and sometimes we think that, they are being lazy. Like there's this image of teenagers being lazy, but really they need sleep. Sleep is so important for their brain development. And so I'm not opposed to letting my teens sleep.
Yeah, sleep is important. I like sleep, so I can totally get that everyone else does too. All right, well, we are going to go ahead and wrap up this segment here today. Just as a reminder, we talked about keeping safe when we think about sports and riding, different things with wheels, helmet usage. Our second topic was car safety. And then lastly, we just talked about scheduling. So hopefully we have happy caregivers and happy kids this summer.
So we'll leave some of the resources that we talked about today in the show notes, so you can check that for more information or any of the links so that you can get connected to car seat check lanes and other resources to help keep your summer safe and your kiddos safe.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to K-State Research and Extension Douglas County's podcast. We hope you tune in again for not only more research-based information and resources you can trust, but also good conversation. Until next time.